The price of games, if you want to get the full experience, has reached a fever pitch lately. What am I talking about? Well, let's take a look at things over the course of time. At first glance, if we look at the price of games from the late 80s to now, it looks like when we adjust for inflation, it's not too bad. But back then, you only bought the game. Let's say the 80s to the late 90s, you bought just the game. Then let's fast forward a bit more and it's like the game and the expansion pack. Flash forward to now, you gotta get the game. You gotta pay $30 for the season pass unless you didn't pre-order. Then that's gonna be $40 for the season pass. Then there's going to be the inevitable expansion pack 2, which is another $30 to $40. Oh, and by the way, games you pay for now have booster packs in them. So let's just chalk that up to the $60 plus any of the previous, plus let's just say $100 to get all the cool stuff you want. Oh, and then we've got my personal favorite, the pre-order edition that costs about $200 that will get you all the DLC, maybe the expansion if you're a good boy or girl. Oh, and also this cute little office toy you can put out. Or all of the above. Yes, some games do literally all of the above, and it is ridiculous. So now that you know what I'm whining about, let's figure out why this happened. Because we need to find a way to fix it, and the best way to fix it is to figure out what is causing the problem instead of just treating the symptom. Exhibit A. Game production costs have gone wildly out of control. Like crazy out of control to the point of where these practices where we have to cordon off, compartmentalize, and cut up games in order to make a product sellable is now just common practice. Let's look at a good example being the Tomb Raider reboot that came out a few years ago. That game in its first month sold 3.4 million copies. As a point of reference, usually it's a newsworthy event if a game passes 1 million copies sold cumulatively. As an example, Doom in 2016 recently passed 2 million copies and people are celebrating. But Tomb Raider was deemed a commercial failure despite selling 3.4 million copies in the first month of release. Now, this could just be chalked up to being intentionally made as a loss leader product, but all the games coming out, all the AAA titles are just that. They're gigantic loss leaders pushing the technology as far as it can be possibly pushed without any regard for, okay, are we overdeveloping? Are we scaling this up way too much? And what originally was a cosmetic skin you can unlock by putting in a cheat code or doing a certain string of events in-game becomes cosmetic DLC, and every little bit they can wring out of a game to get your money is implemented to try and recoup the cost of pushing the absolute limit of what graphics and gameplay can do. And here we are, stuck with games that will cumulatively cost us maybe $150 to $200 to get the full, complete experience. Now, in order to illustrate to you guys a good benchmark of how just crazy inflated the cost of making a AAA game has gotten, we're going to use a few examples from game development then and now. So, for the most part, full-on out-the-door costs for developing a game are pretty obfuscated, unlike movies you'd see from Hollywood productions where they almost brag about that sort of thing. However, I was able to find a good example in the amount of people it takes to make a game. The first example I can think of is the original Deus Ex, made by Ion Storm, was made by about 20 people. Then, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, made by Eidos Montreal, 350 people. That's what? 1, 2, 3. That is 32 times. More than 32 times how many people. Like, wait, am I doing 17.5 times? Excuse me. Now that I actually checked it, Deus Ex Mankind Divided took 17.5 times the manpower that the original game did. And if you think, oh wait, Eidos Montreal, that's a big studio. They probably work on multiple projects at the same time. Well, I've got another example for you that I've written down here in my book. All right. So, in an interview with one of the original XCOM devs, they said that XCOM UFO Defense cost about 115,000 Great Britain pounds, which, if we adjust for inflation, is 215 and about 50 Great Britain pounds today. Now, we transfer that to American freedom dollars, and we are given just under $280,000 to make the original XCOM. So about, we'll say $280,000. Let's plug that number in. Now, as another point of reference, in another interview, one of the developers of XCOM Enemy Unknown that came out in 2012 said that this AAA production had a team of 50 to 60 people. So we're just going to take the number 60, and according to Google, the average salary of a game developer is $71,000. So let's just multiply that by 71,000. And we get $4,260,000. And that's just for game development, like salary. That's not counting co-pays for the health insurance that they hopefully give the developers. That's not counting material costs for things like rent for your office space, computers with the proper specifications to work on. That's not even counting hiring voice actor talent. That's not even counting advertising. We aren't even at the actual out-the-door cost. However, if we divide $4.26 million by the 280,000 that we're rounding up to for the sake of making things easier, it is still 15 times the cost to make the new XCOM as opposed to the original XCOM before we add in everything outside of employee salary. This is insane. Exhibit 2. B. Crap, let's just keep going. Game monetization has proliferated a lot, which is just a fancy way of saying they have found new ways to nickel and dime us at every corner. If you think about it in a reasonable manner, games usually had only one expansion pack back in the day to make the game content financially viable. Like, could you imagine making a run to GameStop or Target, Walmart, wherever you go to buy your games, only to get a $10 pack of loot crates or say a $5 mission DLC? You wouldn't be bothered. You'd be like, no, that is a waste of time. That is a waste of a disc. I'll wait for the expansion to come out because that's stupid. But then come out, like, what was it, 2004, 2005? Oblivion Horse Armor. It was sort of a test in the water to see, okay, can we get people to buy stuff online for games they already own? And people scoffed at it. But over the years, it just, as long as things had a little bit more in them, people would buy anything. Like, as long as it's an attachment, and then season passes became a thing as people started to point out how many silly DLCs people had, and it just keeps on going and going. There's season passes, there's pre-order bonuses, there's those stinking booster packs for cosmetics, which if you are making me pay full price for your game, do not have me buy stinking booster packs. I don't care if you can grind them out with experience. At that point, it's obvious that your game is designed to make me want to cave in and pay money for your stupid little loot boxes instead of spending literally hundreds of hours grinding through boxes, getting experience to get the one skin I want. Just let me buy it wholesale. Enough about any of that other stuff. Enough about boxes. If you're making me pay for the game, don't make me pay for cosmetics in any way, shape, or form. Rant aside, once game consoles had a steady online connection, it was sort of inescapable. And no one party is really to blame for this. Game developers pitched it to executives because they had it as a way to stay on one project for longer, thus ensuring their continuous employment. Game executives lapped that right up because that was a way to get more money out of their already existing products without having to venture into a new project. And game players like you and me, we were complicit in all this. We did not just outright not buy the stuff, therefore we are also equally to blame. That's right, you and me are equally responsible for pre-order culture, partitioning off games to make more DLCs, excessive cosmetic DLCs, and all the other penny pinching in the modern games industry. So why does this all matter? Well, if we're complicit with this kind of thing and reward this behavior by buying all the extra crap and double dipping that game companies do, which will in turn allow them to push their games higher and higher in fidelity, while the games will look nice, we actually will get that game crash that everyone was crying wolf about a couple years ago, and that's gonna be no good. Games are already a luxury item that you have to think about if you want to spend that much money on it versus going out for a night or some other nice thing. If games keep on getting more and more expensive due to having to buy other things to get the full experience of the game, eventually that's going to be an elastic good that snaps back. I think I'm using that term right, but whatever. You get the picture. Games become too expensive, people stop buying games market gets in very serious peril. How do we avert this crisis? Well, I've got a few ideas. 1. Stop buying season passes and all that kind of crap. Wait for the Game of the Year edition, or don't buy into that at all. 2. Support low fidelity indies that know that gameplay will always trump pretty graphics. 3. Stop buying loot boxes in games you paid money for in the first place. There is no excuse for this ever. I don't care if it's cosmetic or practical. Step 4, like, subscribe, comment, and all the crap that goes along with it. I'll see you next time.